America First Policies Incorporated. Thank you very much. Joining us now, Matt Corey, running for U.S. Senate, Republican nominee, Connecticut, the nutmeg state. Matt, thanks for joining us.
John, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak to your audience. Thank you for having me on.
All right, so you were outspent 20-1 trying to get the nomination. Now you're going to get outspent 50-1 by the Chris Murphy machine. You're a big underdog in this race. Is there a pathway to make you competitive?
We have to nationalize this race, John, and we're out there going all over the state. We've been down in D.C. We got endorsed by Ann Coulter, which was a great honor. There's limited funds here in Connecticut. So, if your listeners are out there, if you want to upset the most radical anti-constitutional senator down in Washington, please help us out. This guy's walking across the state, John, does it once a year. He's moved his family to Washington, D.C., so he's completely disconnected with the residents of the state of Connecticut. So I'm a small business owner like you are. While he's walking across the state, I'm actually working across the state. I have a high-rise window cleaning company for over 30 years. There isn't a city or a town that I haven't worked in or walked through or driven through. I hire young kids from the inner city. I give second chances. I own 2 small businesses. So the difference between myself and Senator Murphy is when he walks into a small business, John, they'll ask him what's their plights and pleas and how can he help. Versus when I walk into a small business, I understand compliance, regulation, high energy costs, taxes. So if I go to Washington, I take that to heart. You have to be able to understand the business language. You have to actually meet a payroll, which I do, you do. That's the difference. Small business America. I represent 60% of this country. I'm the guy that's President Trump is talking about in middle America. Mm-hmm. Small business owner, blue-collar worker. I work side by side with the hardworking men and women in the state of Connecticut. I actually wear a hard hat, John.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're with Matt Corey. He's running against Democratic incumbent first-term Senator Chris Murphy in Connecticut. Now, you said that Murphy's one of the most liberal left-wing senators. What makes you say that, Matt?
Well, he is the face of the extreme left. And you were just talking about what can I give away for free. Talks about Medicare for all, tuition waiver. Senator Murphy doesn't think people have to earn it or work for a living, just like himself. If you've never if you don't have any stake in the game, John, you expect things for free. So here's a man that's never worked in the private sector. I was brought up in a family of 7. We were taught the value of $1. And, that's the bread and butter where I come from, and that's the moral grounds that I came from. My father was a mailman, raised 7 kids, and he taught us that. And so, it's easy to say, hey, the giveaways are here, so vote for me. Look, Medicare for all, we used to be the number 1 insurance capital of the world. That would undermine 68,000 jobs here in the state of Connecticut. Not to mention $68 billion in its the gross domestic product here in the state of Connecticut. So he's completely out of touch of what he wants to do. And what he's basically saying, if you've worked all your life and you've contributed to Medicare, you be damned. We're going to give that stuff that you worked away for your entire life, just like they did with the Affordable Care Act. They stole $500 million to fund the Affordable Care Act. As our seniors are suffering, they're telling their seniors and people are ready to retire, yeah, we know you invested in that Medicare, but guess what? We're going to rob it and give it to people that don't deserve it.
We're with Republican Senate candidate from Connecticut, Matt Corey. He's running against Democratic incumbent Chris Murphy. Murphy also rumored to be running for president after he gets, in his mind, a big win here. If you want to get more information, CoreyForSenate.com, COREY, CoreyForSenate.com. You can give him a donation there as well. Chris Murphy, you said, Matt, that he should condemn the threats of violence, not remain silent when these threats are aimed at Republicans. A lot of us were very upset with the vile comments being aimed at Maine Senator Susan Collins. Now, quite frankly, Matt, I like Susan Collins, and you can think of her what you will. She's a moderate. She doesn't always vote our way. I don't like some of her positions, but I respect her independence immensely, and I respect her as a legislator, a person, and a mom. And if you look at some of the vile comments that she's had directed at her, the Wall Street Journal had an article on it. Where are the Democrats here condemning that? Where are they condemning all of this stuff?
Look, I was asked what qualifies me to be a United States Senator. And if you look at the actions of our Senator Blumenthal on the floor of the United States Senate, I think they set the bar pretty low, John. We've seen the spectacle in the United States Senate. That's the people's house. This isn't for charades. This man is more than qualified to be on the Supreme Court. I think it got so bad they had to take the kids and his wife out of that room, and it's just not right. If you have personal issues with something that's different, if it's on policy, that's something else. But what I would say is, it's amazing that the Republicans nominate constitutionalists, originalists, and the Democrats put up for nomination activist judges. Mm-hmm. And the problem with our United States senators is they activated that Supreme Court, whereas they can't garnish enough public support for policy. So they have to turn to the Supreme Court to get some of this legislation passed, as we've seen them with the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm. This is the problem. They've refused to do their job legislatively. And we've seen it under the Obama administration. They've garnished all their power in the United States Senate and turned it over to President Obama through executive order. This president came in and said, look, we want you to do your job. What a novel idea, John. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem we're having down in Washington, is they politicized everything. These hearings should have just went through, and this man is more than qualified. They wouldn't even sit down and talk to the man and vet him. Senate is supposed to advise and consent.
It's the way that Kavanaugh has been treated. It's worse than, in some ways, what they did to Clarence Thomas back. I think that was the 90s or something. And I remember watching that and I was just horrified by the whole thing and how they skewered this poor man. And the same thing has happened with Kavanaugh. But you're right. I mean, where's Murphy condemning the threats of violence? Why is he remaining silent?
Yeah, absolutely, John. This keeps good people from running for office. And I'll tell you, Senator Murphy is the first person to come out when there's a gun tragedy. It was our campaign that called him out before people could even pick up their personal belongings at that Las Vegas gun shooting at that concert field. There was 3 anti-gun groups. Senator Murphy had a donation button hidden behind those 3 anti-gun groups. That's almost more, but he almost looks forward to tragedies to raise his money. He's a one-issue guy. This is obscene. He should be outraged. Where is Senator Murphy? Where are the Democrats on this vile behavior, not only on the Senate floor, but with the threats to Susan Collins? I mean, is this how low that our Senate has fallen? They set the standard and the bar pretty low, John.
All right, let me ask you a policy question as it relates to Congress, Matt Corey. So if you were in Congress yesterday, on Wednesday, Secretary of State Pompeo went to the Congress and sent them a new letter of certification to continue our direct involvement in the Yemenis conflict by supporting the Saudi Emirates coalition against the Houthis in the Yemeni civil war. That certification had to be done because in the NDA that just passed, the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, that passed, it said any involvement that we have in any conflict, the U.S. has to certify that it's minimizing the casualties of civilians and children. It's not really happening in Yemen. Pompeo went for certifications, sent the letter. What do you think our position should be there? And do you think Pompeo is right, or do you think we ought to get out?
I think Pompeo is right. They are an ally. Look, it's war. It's unfortunate that innocent civilians and lives are going to be lost. I would hope the Saudis would be a little more direct on where they're going to be dropping bombs. The unfortunate part is, John, those bombs have U.S. labels on them, so it is making our country look bad. I would hope that they would do that, but I would go back to the $150 billion Senator Murphy okayed to the Iranian mullahs who are funding the Houthi rebels. This is the problem we're having over there, actually funding that war. So where's the responsibility? You have North Korea weapons over there who are engaged in weapons trades with Iran. This is the problem we're having. The bigger picture is who funded that war? Why is Iran in there? They're testing out missiles. They're shooting into Saudi Arabia. The Iranian influence is all over the Middle East. They're the number one sponsor of terror. So, yes, we have to support Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Israel are working together to eradicate terrorism in the Middle East, and we need to support that. It's unfortunate that innocent lives are being lost. But Senator Murphy stood on the floor. He wanted to dictate the military involvement and tell them what to do. We already seen that in Vietnam. We've seen it over in Afghanistan, and we've seen it over in Iraq. We've lost innocent lives. We've lost many of our brave men and women of our military because of rules of engagement. This president has turned those rules of engagement over to our generals on the ground. This is what they don't understand. We don't need politicians calling the shots when our brave men and women are in the line of fire, John.
Do you think if you were in the U.S. Senate, Matt, are you in favor of the administration coming and getting a new AUMF and authorization for military force, or are you okay with Mitch McConnell's status quo, which is basically we're going to operate off the one that was passed in 2001?
I'd have to look at it, John, but I think a new authorization act would be great. But you have to look at this economy. We have a strong dollar, John. We are bringing countries to the table without shooting a weapon. We're bringing Turkey to the table. He's putting a lot of pressure on Iran. This is what we want. We have a blockade. We're going to prevent a blockade from the oil coming through the Straits of Hormuz. We are going to bring countries to the table because we have a strong economy. This is peace through strength. Peace through strength. Now, he was criticized for talking to the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un. He's criticized for talking to Putin. You can't have it both ways. You know, there was 3 carrier groups off the coast of North Korea. Senator Murphy was calling the president unstable while he was on an Asian Pacific tour. That is wrong. He was calling out Mike Pompeo as he was bringing 3 American citizens home. He was calling out the president because we weren't doing joint exercises with South Korea. Well, you can't have it both ways. Peace through strength, and we want diplomacy. And I think this president is on the right track to bringing peace around the world.
All right, Matt, final question, and we're with Matt Corey, Republican U.S. Senate candidate in Connecticut, the Nutmeg State, running against Democrat one-term incumbent U.S. Senator Chris Murphy. Murphy, a pretty significant favorite there, but Matt trying to make some inroads. Certainly, if you get, if you hold, first of all, if you win, that's the end of him. If you hold Murphy in the very low 50s, which I think is you got a shot at, then his budding presidential campaign is going to kind of fizzle
out.
Well,
look, he's at 54% right now after spending $5 million in this cycle. If we had just a little help, John, just a little help. Imagine if we had another ad contrasting his ad as he's walking across the state of Connecticut, meeting people. We're actually working across the state of Connecticut as a small business owner. Once again, I represent 60% of America. They say, we don't feel like we have proper representation in Washington. What about small business owners? What about people, the hardworking men and women of this country? We are the forgotten ones. We have enough elitist lawyers down there. It's nothing against lawyers, but this is their playground. This is their playground in the United States Senate. It was on full display the last few weeks.
Well, listen, for our listeners out there, Corey for Senate, go to CoreyForSenate.com, CoreyForSenate.com, COREY, and give him a look and give him a donation, because if he's going to make this race competitive, he's going to get outspent 25-1. Give him a donation. Matt, you're definitely, just so our audience knows, as you know, that anybody comes on my show, there's no discussion of topics. You just answer the questions. Matt, it's obvious to me you have a pretty good grasp of some of the key foreign policy issues confronting the U.S. So let me ask you the final one here. The Assad offensive in Idlib is going to cause a major refugee crisis. Over 1 million people are going to be displaced. Many of them are going to get there's going to be a bloodbath there as the Assad offensive rolls in order to take Idlib back. President Erdogan in Turkey in a tough spot because he's been backing the rebels, but now they're going to be coming into Turkey as refugees. What's the solution, Matt?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's who's on our side, who are we fighting, you got ISIS in through there, you got the Iranian Guard through there. It's going to be rough. The U.S. has set a ground and said, look, we're here to stay. This is no easy solution. Russia's not going to give up its naval base. And It's not going to give up its air bases. A regime change, I don't think that's going to happen, John. But a refugee crisis is it's unthinkable. But that's what's happening.
All right. Well, we'll see what Erdogan does. This is a very difficult thing. Also, the Russians don't want to upset their kind of fragile alliance with Turkey either. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But look, Idlib is going to fall. Assad, as I've been saying this, Matt, you don't know me, but I've been saying since the 7-year civil war started, the Russians were going to keep him in power. He was not going to get overthrown. And now it's a matter of months after the 7-year civil war that Assad is back in control of all of Syria. They're going to have to go from there. I'm out of time. Thank you, Matt. Corey for Senate. Go to CoreyForSenate.com, CoreyForSenate.com. Thanks for being with us, Matt.
Hey, John. Thank you so much.
John Frederick's Radio Network, Trucking the Truth.